Hello, everybody. This is a Tuning Up to Thrive conversation. And with me today, I have a relatively new friend who does a lot of wonderful healing things. She and I met through the On Purpose Woman Global Community, the global gathering we had a couple of months ago. And now I see her everywhere because we are in several programs together. She does wonderful, wonderful work, and I am going to let her tell you. This is Dr. Sri Meleth, and she is going to talk about taming the inner critic. Now, if you've listened to me, you know that this is the kind of topic that I can really get into. So, welcome, Sri. We look forward to hearing what you have to share.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It's a pleasure to be here. So, taming the inner critic. How many of us are aware of having an inner critic, right? So, every time you step up to do something that is out of your comfort zone, if we are talking about entrepreneurs here, for example, if you are stepping up to speak in a networking meeting, or if you are about to sell something, sell your services, it is so easy to recognize this voice inside you that is saying, oh, 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 be careful, don't be too loud, don't be too proud, don't boast too much, right? So there are all of these things that we are so used to hearing, and what it does is, often what we do is we ignore it, and I'm just going to try to see if I can, yeah, ignore it, and then we push through without actually dealing with that inner critic. But but we are, because the voice is going on inside, the way our energy comes across is as a suppressed, a diminished version of ourselves. And when that happens, that's what the people who are listening to us get. So they do not see us in our full power. They sense that there is a hesitation in within us. And so it's very difficult then to sell yourself, whatever it is that you're selling. You may be selling an actual product that costs something. You might just be selling yourself, in the sense that I know what I have these skills. I am capable of um, serving you, and and let me tell you why I am good at this. And when we do that with this diminished energy, that comes across. And as a result of that, we do not achieve what we want to. And then it becomes a vicious cycle, because the next time we stand up, the inner critic will say, see, remember the last time you tried to do this? You didn't succeed. Nobody wanted to hear you. Nobody wanted to listen to you. And so then it becomes an ongoing saga, in a sense, until we stop and we learn to, I don't know what happened here. One second.
I'm going
There.
to interrupt you a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you for starting to share. Why don't you can continue that, but also let people know a little bit about who you are
Yeah.
and why they might want to listen to you. And then also, I want you to extend that a little farther. How does that apply, what you're talking about, to people who want to build a business?
Sure. Just a second. I have 1 second. I am getting some technical glitches here. So just let me close a bunch of this stuff so that I don't have stuff going off suddenly. All right. So who am I? I was going to get into it, but let me just finish that thought. So what happens is that we become enmeshed in that story of not being good enough. Who am I to talk about this? Why would I know about the inner critic? Because I've been there, right? Um I often tell the story about being a 6-year-old child who was taken to a convent school to be admitted into first grade. I had just finished kindergarten in a Catholic school and I was taken to a convent all girls school. I was taken into this little room, and the nun made me sit there and put a bunch of numbers in front of me. I had no idea what was going on. To cut a very long story short, I failed that exam and that test, and I was not admitted into that school. Although my mom did not say anything, I, as a child who absorbed energy, I knew she was very disappointed. I heard her talking about how she felt that she had taken time to teach my brothers but had not had enough time to work with me, and how disappointed she was in that, right? So that for me was the beginning of a sense of not being good enough. All these years later, I'm 65 years old now. Even now, when there is something that I feel that I don't know how to do well. So if I have to write something, or in academia, if I had to start writing a paper and I felt inadequate, the first person that came up was that 6-year-old child who felt so who just wanted to hide somewhere because she just wanted all the people in the family to stop asking her about why she didn't know how to do carryover sums. That's what happens to us. So who is the inner critic that we're talking about? The inner critic is that for me, part of my inner critic is that 6-year-old child who does not want to feel that way anymore. And so every time I step up to do something that seems unusual, that seems out of the box, she begins to cringe. She begins to feel unsafe. And there is this theory in neuroscience which says that the biggest thing that evolution prepared us for was survival, that is very, very associated with safety, right? So when we are unsafe, we get into the fight, flight, freeze response. And that limits our ability to be creative, limits our ability to be fully open and welcoming, because we ourselves are feeling unsafe. So, so that is why it is really important to understand. One of the questions I ask my clients all the time is, whose voice is that, the voice of that inner critic? Is it is it a parent? Is it a teacher? Is it, for me, it was a bunch of my uncles and cousins who, because we lived in a joint family, and there was all of this teasing and making me feel not good enough. So who is it for you that is the voice of the inner critic? And isn't it time for you to stop giving him or her the power that she has? And how can you do it? So that's the work I do with my clients. Sandra, go ahead and tell me what you do with your clients and inner critics.
I work with the inner critic using first awareness tools, just helping
Mhm.
people be more aware of what it is going on. And then the technique that I use is the make anything possible technique. So working to clear trauma from memories.
Mhm.
So you can see how what you do and what I do are very complementary.
Yeah,
I think that there's benefit in approaching these issues from multiple different directions.
absolutely.
So it's
That's
like the
right.
way you work with people and the way I work with people is going to be a little bit different. And if if my issue, let's say this, um, what we're talking about, right,
Hmm.
is like a diamond, there's a thousand facets to it.
Yeah.
If I am only working with somebody doing this, the person's part that's trying to escape can
Yeah.
get away from it. But if Sri then uses her approach with a different direction and a different direction, then the person's more able to make progress with
Yeah.
where they are with this. And then this starts to get smaller instead of
Yeah.
being so intrusive and in their face. Then they start to find more freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Freedom. My business is called Freeing Ourselves, right? So freedom is what we are trying to achieve. And what I do with my clients is I use meditation, and I use emotional freedom techniques, and I use also a lot of visualization. So the first thing I do is I get people into their bodies. It's essential to bring ourselves and ground ourselves in our body before we start doing any of this work with deep subconscious beliefs, because the way they are lodged in our nervous system is partly in our physicality, right? So it's really important for us to be fully grounded in our body before we start doing the work. And then we examine, I say, okay, so imagine that you are standing in front of a crowd and about to sell a product, or you are about to sell your services in an talk about your services in a networking meeting. What happens? And typically they will be, it might start with feelings like, I'm feeling nervous, my legs are weak, my whatever it is, and then you bring it back to the body and say, where are you feeling it, what are you feeling, what is the level, so between 1 and 10, how strong is the feeling. Then I would use meditation to take them back to figure out, when did you first feel this. So, like I was talking about, that for me, it's very easy to identify when that 6-year old is activated. And invariably, there is a time in their past, usually between the ages of 0 and 6, but it could be anything else. I always say, whatever memory comes up is the memory that is ready to be healed. And then we examine what is it that happened there. So for some people, it could be that they feel that they don't deserve something because they feel so guilty about something that happened in the past. For others, it could be that there is something wrong about wanting something, right? I remember being a little kid again, and my father having bought me an expensive dress for a wedding, and all these uncles around saying, oh, she's such a spoiled child, why did you spend so much money on this dress? And immediately me shrinking and absorbing that it was wrong to feel happy for having that dress. So there are multiple stories that lay one on top of the other that create this sense of, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve. And so when we uncover that story, then we deal with that part of us that has not healed. And we use this technique called emotional freedom technique, which is basically tapping on the acupressure points. And it brings together cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, and the Eastern medicine and Chinese meridians to both tell people, show the client why it is a lie that they don't deserve, expose them to that trauma or incident that has created the trigger, um, while tapping. And when you're tapping, what happens is that the autonomic nervous system that is in fight, flight, freeze mode is tamped down, and the positive aspect of the parasympathetic system is activated. So then your intuition is heightened, your ability to be creative is heightened, your receptivity to these new ideas about you're really not to blame for something that happened when you were 6 years old, um, are much more easily absorbed. So then we go through the tapping sessions, we check in on how much the intensity has changed, and then we go back and see what else is coming up. And in the end, we once the person feels that when we've reached a level of activity that is between 1 and 2, if it was a 10, we want it to come down to at least a 4 or a 3. Ideally it should be a 2. Then we begin to work in the positive things, right? I can do this, I deserve this, I and we include visualizations. I take people through seeing what they can do, why they can do it. Because while a lot of us have all of these negative things that are readily accessible and easily triggered, we also have a bunch of positive things that we have done. For example, if you were talking to me, why am I a badass? Because have lived I lost my mom at the age of 19. I got married at the age of 21. I've traveled the world with my husband and 2 kids, moved over 35 times across 3 or 4 continents. And in the meantime, I have gathered 3 master's degrees, a doctoral degree, several certifications. And I am now in a position where I am able to actually become a solopreneur. I was completely financially independent, and then now I have stepped into this role. But that is not what shows up when I'm standing up in front of a crowd and trying to sell myself. What shows up first is that 6 year old child who felt that she didn't know anything or didn't have enough knowledge of what she was going to do. So when we do these techniques, what happens is that we are able to hold that 6 year old child and tell her not to be afraid, that you, the adult today, has things in control, and then bring up all of these positive things that you have done. I have people who have run have completed 3 Ironman events, who are still hesitant to say that they're good enough. They're physical, they're trainers, and despite of all of this experience that they have, they don't know how to put themselves forward because there is so much of this back talk that they have not worked on. So when we learn to comfort that little person who is scared that when you step up into the limelight something terrible might happen, then we are able to actually shine a light fully. Sandra.
Thank you for sharing so much wisdom with us, Sri. Why don't you give our audience something practical that they can do in their life?
I think the most practical thing that I would want you to take away from this conversation is to become aware of that voice inside you, right? So imagine that you are going to do something that you have not done before. And right now we're talking about business, we're talking about entrepreneurs. Imagine yourself standing in front of a, a crowd of women who are your ideal fit clients, trying to sell something to them. What are the voices inside? And even start talking, right? Start selling something and pay attention, become really aware of all of the voices that are coming in. And what I would do is have a notepad and paper down and begin to write down what are all of the voices, that all of the statements that you can hear. That will give you a really good sense of where you are being blocked when you are trying to do this. For me, meditative writing is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And meditative writing is a very useful tool to then be able to create what we call tapping scripts, because it really helps you to delve deep into what the inner blocks are and who the inner critic is. And then you can create your own tapping script and and become powerful in taming your inner critic. We all need to tame our inner critic, and she shows up in different ways as we climb, as we level up at different levels. That's not the best way to say it, but you understand what I mean. As we climb the ladders and we become bigger and better versions of ourselves, the inner critic shows up in different ways, because it always feels unsafe to do that. So what we need to do then is we need to be able to be aware of her and know how to hold her and make calm her down, so that your full power is visible to the world. For me, that's the most important thing for us to do.
Thank you, Sri. Why don't you tell our audience how they can connect with you and if you have something for them?
I do. So my website is called Freeing Ourselves. So it's freeingourselves.com. So that's really easy to remember. I do have a gift for you, a free gift that is called Taming the Inner Critic. It has a few videos in it which will take you through the process of creating your own tapping script, and take you through a tapping session, show you how you use that script. And I would, at the end of it, you also have a way to connect with me if you, in order to take this work much deeper. It is important to have someone to hold the space for you, particularly if you are someone who has been through significant trauma, and there are deeper reasons for that inner critic to be that powerful. So take advantage of the free gift, and let's talk some more after you've examined it. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you so much for being with us, Sri. So, thank you, audience, for being here for Tuning Up to Thrive Conversations. We'll see you again another time. I'm Sandra Lee, intuitive sound and energy healer. Women healers and coaches hire me to grow their business because most are overwhelmed, scattered, and don't have enough clients. So I help them identify opportunities for increasing their income fast, structure their business for sustainable growth, and tap into and enhance their intuition. Bottom line, they increase their income and impact. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.